Hi, my name is Jo Klink, and I'm the co-leader of the Aviation Club along with my husband Tim Klink. And today I have with me Ashley Barnett, a project manager here at Shell Point. And Ashley will be speaking to our Aviation Club on October 24th. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
We're glad that you can come and speak to our Aviation Club. I understand that you did not grow up in the United States. Where are you from?
I was born in South Africa and grew up in Johannesburg. I only came here early 90s.
Interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about your career path that brought you to the United States?
My father wanted us out of South Africa in the mid-70s because he figured that there were going to be problems once apartheid was gotten rid of or was dismantled. And he never saw it as problems of civil war. He saw it as problems of unemployment, and unemployment leads to violence. And he was right. By the time everything had been undone, there was huge unemployment, which leads to violence.
Yeah,
and
a lot of violence.
Yes, you don't feel safe.
So about what year did you come?
Early 90s, 91, 92.
Good. And what has your career been? What have you done in your professional career?
I've come through a sales background into a internet agency background. My company built websites. I sold the company in 2006 and then took on project management with an interior design company. And sales teaches you to project manage. You have lots of things to put together, and my sales were always complex, long, complex, and the important thing was the communication. And project management's about communicating, planning, and complexity.
I know we as residents appreciate that. When we know there's a project being done, we like to know what's happening and when. I understand that you are now managing some of the laundry room renovations, and I know Royal Bonnet is on your list.
We're working around. We'll get there eventually, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a beautiful place to work. It's a lovely place to work, and I'm thoroughly enjoying being here.
We're so glad to have you. Now, for the Aviation Club, what will you be speaking to us about?
I grew up with a Spitfire built in my backyard, a World War II Mark 9 Spitfire.
So how old were you when this began, and how did it come about? I
was 6, I think, 6 or 7, and my father was aviation mad from when he was a little boy. And
what made him so interested in aviation?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I just know that a joke was like he was an airplane rather than a person. He loved it so much. And he always wanted to fly a Spitfire. He would bicycle out at between 8 and 10 because he was only born in early 30s. So he never got to fly in the Second World War. And he would bicycle out to the nearest airfield and lie there and watch the fighter pilots being trained. And he wanted to fly Spitfires. He even thought about the fact that if he went to university in London, which he did, he could fly with the University of London squadron and thereby fly Spitfires. But by the time he got there, they had disbanded the Spitfire squadrons.
So what was special about the Spitfire to him and to anyone?
You know, of all the World War II aircraft, it's the most beautiful. It has very fine lines. It has a very distinctive sound. And if you're a pilot, it's very fast, very maneuverable. It had big teeth because it had narrow wheelbase when it landed or took off. And it was loved. It was beloved by the people. It was beloved by the
It was a pretty effective fighter in World War II, right?
It was. It was their second level of attack, and it could outfly any of the German fighters.
We often see them in air shows now, I know. But when your dad decided to rebuild it, there probably weren't very many around.
They were all static. There were no flying Spitfires. The Spitfires were demobbed, given to some of the Commonwealth nations as aircraft to use or sold to them, and then destroyed.
Wow.
Literally taken apart, and what they were just thrown away.
So how did your dad get parts, or how did he begin the project?
They found a fuselage and 2 wings lying in a field north of Johannesburg, and it was scrap. And I call this speech a magnificent obsession, because from his obsession developed something called the spirit of the Spitfire, which is what he'd call it, is that people just love Spitfires, and everything they needed eventually appeared. So it was a project. He was the leader of the project with the obsession, but it brought everybody into it. And the parts came, and they very slowly, in an 800 square foot workshop in my backyard, built a Spitfire.
And how old were you when this project began?
6, 7.
So you grew up with this airplane in your backyard?
In my backyard, in the garage, and when I couldn't be found, and they knew that I wasn't off the property, they would eventually go look in the garage. I'd be sitting in the cockpit of the fuselage.
Did you learn to fly?
I did. I flew for a lot of time. I could fly long before I could drive.
Really?
I loved to fly. And unfortunately, for medical reasons, I don't fly anymore. But I would sit up next to my dad, and wherever we were going, I would fly the airplane. I would get it just after takeoff.
Your family owned an airplane?
Yeah, right from when I was...
Other than a Spitfire?
Yes, yeah, they flew Bonanzas, they flew Pipers. So always enough to put 6 of us in and take us somewhere.
So you always flew?
I always
your
flew.
whole life, as well as your dad?
Yep,
and
my brother.
It's amazing, isn't it, that your dad had such a passion for rebuilding this airplane. I'm sure it was not an easy task to try to do.
It was an insanity. If you think about it now, with what he started with, the lack of knowledge, the huge hurdles that he had to overcome, it was craziness. But he was the leader, and it drew the people.
I'm really going to be interested in hearing how you got the airplane out of your backyard. So we'll save that for the Aviation Club, but that sounds like such a very interesting story of your life. And we'd like to invite all of you to join us as well at the Aviation Club on Thursday, October 24th at 1:15 in the Social Center. See you then.